The global economy can feel, well, massively abstract. There is a ton of intimidating jargon out there. But today, we're breaking it all down into totally tangible, easy to understand building blocks. If you've ever felt overwhelmed trying to figure out how it all works, you are absolutely in the right place. We're going to simplify the complex and see exactly how the world around us is constructed, literally from the ground up. So, let's just dive right in. Think about something super simple, like a pair of blue denim jeans. You probably throw them on without a second thought, right? But getting them made actually relies entirely on this core idea of scarcity. The denim is made of cotton, grown on limited land that could have easily been used for other crops. The factory workers cutting and sewing, they are limited human resources who could be doing totally different jobs. Even the machines used to stitch the fabric are scarce. Every single product you interact with only exists because someone carefully organized these limited, scarce resources. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll be looking at 1. The economic building blocks. 2. The ultimate risk taker. 3. Production versus productivity. 4. The 3 economic sectors. And finally, 5. The real-world picture.
All right, part 1, the economic building blocks, specifically the 4 factors of production. Let's kick things off with the first factor, land. Now, in economics, land doesn't just mean the dirt you build a house on. It's actually any natural resource used to produce goods and services. We're talking about the water used to grow crops, the copper wired into your phone, the oil extracted from the earth, and the forest harvested for timber. These can be renewable, like solar power, or non-renewable, like natural gas. And here's the fun fact. In the economic world, the income earned by the owners of these natural resources is referred to as rent.
Next up, we've got labor. This is the human element. Labor represents the actual physical and mental effort that people contribute to the production process. It's the waiter bringing your food at a local restaurant, the artist painting a canvas, or the highly trained engineer designing the bus you take to work. Basically, if you have ever been paid a wage for a job you've done, you have contributed your labor to the economy. In fact, wages earned from labor are the single largest source of income for most people globally.
Then we have our third factor, capital. You can just think of capital as all the man-made resources we use to create other things. Your tools, basically. That includes a carpenter's hammer, a forklift in a warehouse, factory conveyor belts, office computers, and even delivery vans. And capital looks different depending on the profession. A doctor's capital includes things like a stethoscope and an exam room, while a teacher's capital is whiteboards and textbooks. Oh, and the income earned by the owners of these capital resources, that is known as interest.
Now, you might be looking at that list and thinking, hold on a second, where's money in all this? Isn't money capital? Well, actually, no. The crucial thing to remember here is that money itself is not a productive resource. It's simply a facilitator of trade, a medium of exchange. Sure, you absolutely use money to buy capital, but the cash itself doesn't actively build or produce a single thing. I mean, think about it. When was the last time you saw a carpenter trying to pound a nail into a piece of wood with a rolled-up $20 bill? Or a warehouse foreman trying to lift a heavy pallet with a huge stack of 50s? No way, right? You need actual physical capital, like a hammer or a forklift, to produce goods. Money just helps you get your hands on those tools. Moving right along to section 2, the ultimate risk taker and how we bring all these factors to life. Because here's the thing, land, labor, and capital just sitting there idle, they don't do anyone any good without our fourth factor. The absolute easiest way to understand this is through a chef analogy. Imagine opening a restaurant. Land provides your raw ingredients, like veggies and meat. Labor gives you the cooks and the waitstaff. Capital provides the ovens, the knives, the whole physical kitchen. But without the head chef, the entrepreneur, who actually combines those ingredients with a vision, organizes the staff, and designs the menu, there's no meal. The entrepreneur is the visionary who organizes everything else and takes on the risk to make it happen.
It's pretty fascinating how our understanding of this role has evolved over time. Back in the 18th century, Richard Cantillon was the first to define entrepreneurs purely as the ultimate risk bearers. Then, by the early 19th century, J.B. Say highlighted them as brilliant organizers who coordinate resources. But it was really in the 20th century that Joseph Schumpeter nailed the modern essence, describing them as innovators driving creative destruction. Today, the entrepreneur isn't just a manager, they are the central spark of economic growth and progress.
But wow, stepping into those shoes takes immense grit. Just consider this staggering statistic. Over 70% of startups fail within their first 5 years. The entrepreneur takes on massive financial risks, faces constant uncertainty, and deals with heavy stress. Honestly, that 70% failure rate is exactly why the ultimate reward for successful entrepreneurship, profit, is totally justified. Resiliency is for sure their key trait. Which brings us to section 3, production versus productivity. Efficiency is key here. Okay, before we scale these concepts up to the level of massive national industries, we've got to clear up a super common mix-up. Two words that sound similar but mean very different things: production and productivity. Production is simply your total overall output. If your bakery makes 200 loaves of bread in a day, boom, that's your production. Productivity, on the other hand, measures efficiency. It looks at how much output each individual worker is generating. So if your workers start using a better technique and go from baking 20 loaves per worker to 25 loaves per worker, their productivity just increased. A strong economy doesn't just want to produce more by mindlessly adding bodies. The goal is to increase productivity so each unit of labor generates more value. All right, section 4, the 3 economic sectors. Let's scale things from micro to macro. So we understand the raw ingredients and micro-level efficiency. Now, how do entire economies actually organize all this? Well, economists group business activities into 3 main sectors that act almost like a giant global supply chain. First up is the primary sector. This is all about extracting raw materials directly from nature. Think agriculture, mining, forestry. Then those materials flow into the secondary sector, the manufacturing hub. This sector transforms raw materials into consumer goods, like an auto plant turning steel into cars. Finally, we have the tertiary sector. This is the service and logistics wing. It distributes the goods and provides intangible services, covering everything from banking and healthcare to education. Let's put this into perspective with Section 5, the real-world picture, where we'll examine the Indian economy.
To really ground this theory in reality, let's look at the modern Indian economy, specifically data from 2020 to 2021. You'll notice right away that the tertiary, or services sector, is absolutely dominating. It makes up nearly 54% of the economy's value. The secondary industry sector sits at roughly 26%, and the primary agricultural sector is about 20%. As economies develop and advance, we almost always see this massive shift toward the tertiary sector. Services become the primary engine driving growth and employment. All right, we have covered a ton of ground today, from those basic building blocks all the way to massive economic sectors. Let's do a quick mental check to lock it all in with a rapid-fire round of Name That Resource. I'll give you the item, and we'll categorize it. First, a forklift. That's man-made machinery used for production, so capital. Next, a factory building. Again, a physical, man-made space. Capital for sure. Third, underground oil. Naturally occurring, just waiting to be extracted.
That is definitely land. And finally, Walt Disney, the visionary who took immense risks and organized everything. Yep, he is the entrepreneur. So what's the big takeaway from this explainer? Well, remember those blue jeans from the beginning? Goods are scarce because the resources used to make them are limited. Everything around you is built by combining land, labor, capital, and a visionary entrepreneur. Also, remember the carpenter with the $20 bill? Money is just a facilitator, not true productive capital. And finally, economies scale up, functioning interdependently from primary raw extraction all the way to complex tertiary services. As we wrap up, I want to leave you with something to chew on. Look around at the brands, the tech, the services you interact with every single day. Who is your favorite entrepreneur? And how exactly did they organize the scarce resources of land, labor, and capital to make their vision a reality and ultimately change the world? Think about it. Thanks so much for learning with me today, and keep exploring.